Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are going to be exploring something that's been generating a lot of buzz lately in the energy world. Small modular reactors, or SMRs.
Yeah,
You've sent us a bunch of really interesting stuff
right.
about how China's kind of leading the way with these next generation reactors.
Yeah, they're really pushing ahead.
So we're super excited to dig into all that with you.
Absolutely.
But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
let's start with just the basics. For anyone who's maybe not totally familiar.
Okay.
What exactly are SMRs and why is everyone suddenly making such a big deal about them?
So basically, SMRs are kind of like mini nuclear reactors.
Mm,
Okay. They're like way smaller than the traditional ones we're used to.
Right.
Like a fraction of the size.
Interesting.
We're talking like 110th to 14th.
Wow.
And what's really exciting about them is that they could totally change the way we think about nuclear power. Like, imagine instead of these massive multi-billion-dollar projects that take forever to build,
Yeah.
we have these smaller, more flexible reactors that can be built in factories and shipped anywhere.
Oh, wow. That's super interesting.
Yeah, it's like a whole new ball game.
It's almost like Legos.
Yeah.
Legos for clean energy.
Exactly.
That's a really cool way to think about it. And I know you're, really passionate about clean energy.
Definitely.
So this has got to be right up your alley.
Absolutely. It's super exciting to see this technology developing.
Yeah, and SMRs, they produce power without those greenhouse gases.
Right.
So it makes them a really attractive option,
Yep.
as we're trying to find these cleaner ways to power the world.
Exactly. It's a critical part of the solution.
Totally.
And, it's interesting because there's this whole global race going on right now.
Really?
Oh, yeah, to develop SMRs.
Wow.
Like all over the world, there are teams working on this.
I had no idea.
Yep, tons of different designs in development. Over 80, actually.
80. That's a lot.
It shows you how much attention this technology is getting.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, but, from what we've seen,
Yeah.
China seems to be way ahead of the pack.
That's what our sources are saying too.
Yeah, they're really out there in front.
Yeah. So how so?
Well, for one thing,
Okay.
they actually already have SMRs up and running.
Wow. Seriously?
Yep, pumping power into their grid as we speak.
That's amazing.
It is. It's a big milestone.
Okay, so can we talk about these Chinese SMRs then? I'm dying to know
Sure.
what makes them tick.
Okay, so the first one is called the HTR-PM,
Okay.
and it's actually the world's first grid-connected SMR.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh.
that's a pretty big deal in itself.
Yeah.
And this one uses this really unique pebble bed design.
Pebble bed.
Yeah, so picture this. Thousands of these tiny uranium fuel pellets,
Okay.
all encased in graphite,
Uh-huh.
and they're all cooled by helium.
Helium. Oh, wait, like the stuff in balloons?
Yep, that's the one.
I had no idea you could use that in a nuclear reactor.
It's pretty wild, right?
It is.
But it's actually a really ingenious technology.
Okay.
So the combination of the pebble bed and the helium creates this super safe system.
Okay.
Because even if something goes wrong,
Mm-hmm.
the reactor basically cools itself down.
So, it's designed to prevent meltdowns.
Exactly. It's inherently very safe.
That's really reassuring, especially after, accidents like Fukushima.
Right.
That really shook people's trust in nuclear power.
Yeah, definitely.
But you said China has another operational SMR too, right?
They do.
The Linglong one.
Yes, that's right.
What's the story with that one?
Well, this one is interesting because it just passed this independent safety assessment
Oh, wow.
by the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Okay.
So that's like the gold standard for nuclear safety.
So it's a pretty big deal.
Huge. It gives SMRs a lot of international credibility.
So it's like a stamp of approval from the experts.
Exactly.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a major step forward for the whole industry.
But what about cost, though? Aren't SMRs supposed to be cheaper to build than those traditional nuclear plants?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to know the answer to that.
Right.
And while the idea of cheaper nuclear power is super appealing,
Sure.
the reality is a bit more complicated.
Okay.
It's still early days,
Okay.
and there are a lot of opinions out there.
Yeah, our sources had some mixed information on that too.
Right.
One study said that current SMR projects might not be economically viable yet.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
But then we found this Australian report.
Okay.
And it predicted that the price of SMRs could drop dramatically
Interesting.
in the next 5 years.
Hmm.
Similar to what happened with solar power.
Oh, right.
Remember how expensive those solar panels used to be?
Oh, yeah.
Now they're everywhere.
It's true. Costs have come down a lot.
So could SMRs follow that same path?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, like could they become that affordable?
Well, it's possible, but, we have to remember the solar power revolution was driven by a bunch of different factors.
Like what?
Government subsidies, technological advancements, economies of scale.
Okay.
So it's not a guarantee that SMRs will follow that same trajectory,
Right.
but it's definitely something to watch closely.
Totally.
It'll be interesting to see how things develop.
Yeah, and speaking of watching things closely, have you heard about what's happening in the tech world?
What's that?
Like big companies,
Right.
like Microsoft, Google, even Amazon.
Uh-huh.
They're starting to invest in SMR companies.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's a pretty big deal, right?
It is. It shows that even these tech giants are seeing the potential of SMRs,
Makes sense.
especially as they're trying to find cleaner energy
Yeah.
to power all their massive data centers.
Right. Because those data centers are huge energy hogs.
They are. It's a big challenge for them.
Yeah, and I was reading that Amazon invested in this SMR startup called X Energy,
I did hear about that.
and it caused like this huge buzz in the industry.
Yeah, it was big news.
And apparently their stock like went through the roof after the announcement.
Yeah, it definitely got people's attention.
Yeah, it seems like everyone is suddenly paying attention to SMRs.
They are. It's a hot topic right now.
But with all this excitement,
Yeah.
we can't ignore some of the bigger concerns about nuclear power in general.
That's true. There are still important issues to address.
Yeah, you're talking about nuclear waste, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
It's a major issue for any kind of nuclear technology,
Right.
including these new SMRs.
Absolutely. It's something we can't just brush aside.
Okay, so let's talk about that then.
Sure.
Like, how do these smaller reactors change things
Okay.
when it comes to dealing with nuclear waste?
Yeah, that's a really important question. It is. It's a question that a lot of researchers are trying to figure out right now.
Yeah.
You see, nuclear waste is basically what's left over after the uranium fuel is used up in a reactor.
Right.
It's radioactive, and it has to be stored very carefully for a very long time.
Okay, so like, how long are we talking? Decades? Centuries?
Think bigger, like way bigger.
Oh, wow.
Some of this high-level waste we're talking about needs to be isolated
Okay.
for tens of thousands of years before it's safe.
Oh,
Millennia, literally.
that's mind-boggling.
It is. It's a huge challenge.
So what do we do with it then? Just bury it and like hope for the best?
It's a little more complicated than that.
Okay.
But essentially, yeah.
Yep.
Right now, spent nuclear fuel is stored in these pools of water
Yeah.
to cool it down.
Uh-huh.
And then it's transferred to these super tough dry casks
Okay.
for long-term storage,
Got it.
often deep underground in these specially designed repositories.
Okay. That sounds pretty intense.
It is. It's a serious process.
And I bet it costs a fortune, too.
It does.
So is that where SMRs and waste gets tricky?
That's part of it, yeah.
Okay.
Because some people argue that since SMRs are smaller
Right.
and potentially more efficient,
Uh-huh.
they might actually produce less waste overall.
Sure. That makes sense to me. Smaller reactor, less fuel, needed less waste left over.
Exactly. That's the thinking.
Okay.
But in practice, it's not quite that straightforward.
Oh, how so?
Remember that Stanford study we mentioned?
Yeah.
It suggested that the way most SMRs are designed right now
Okay.
might actually lead to more waste.
More waste.
Yeah, per unit of energy.
Hold on. So even though the reactors are smaller,
Right.
they could produce more waste?
Per megawatt of power, yeah.
How does that even work?
It all comes down to the fuel cycle
Okay.
and the reactor design.
Got it.
Some SMRs are super efficient with fuel,
Uh-huh.
while others need refueling more often,
Okay.
which ends up creating more waste over time.
So it's not as simple as it seems.
Nope, it's complicated.
It really is.
And that's why research into these advanced fuel cycles
Yeah.
and better waste management tech
Uh-huh.
is so important for making nuclear power, including SMRs,
Right.
a viable long-term solution.
Totally. It sounds like we still have a way to go.
We-
Before we can confidently say SMRs are like a totally clean and sustainable option.
That's fair to say.
But hey, at least there's a ton of investment going into this field right now,
That's true. There's a lot of momentum.
especially with those big tech companies jumping on board.
Oh, yeah. That's a game changer.
It is.
And it's important to remember
Okay.
those investments aren't just about profits.
Right.
They're driven by this urgent need to address climate change.
Yeah.
Data centers, as we know, are massive energy hogs.
Oh, they are?
And these companies are under a lot of pressure to clean up their operations.
Yeah.
SMRs offer a potential solution.
Okay.
Reliable, always-on clean energy.
Right.
That doesn't depend on the weather, like solar and wind.
Right. That's a big advantage.
It is.
But it's not just big tech either.
You're right.
Governments all over the world are pouring money into SMR research and development.
They are. It's a global effort.
The UK, for example, has a whole program dedicated to supporting SMRs as part of their strategy to hit net zero emissions.
That's right. They're going all in on this.
And Canada and the US are also looking into it.
Yeah, everyone's trying to figure out how SMRs fit into their energy mix.
It's fascinating how each country has their own unique take on it.
It is. It really shows the potential of this technology.
Yeah, it highlights how versatile SMRs could be.
Exactly.
But, with any powerful tool,
Right.
we need to consider those broader implications.
Absolutely. We can't just focus on the tech itself.
Yeah, like nuclear power, even in a smaller package, still carries a lot of weight.
It does. It's a powerful force.
Yeah, and there are always those concerns about safety and security.
Right. We can't ignore that.
Even with all the advanced safety features,
Yeah,
accidents can still happen.
they can, and we need to be prepared for that possibility.
So it's all about having those rigorous safety protocols
Absolutely.
and ongoing testing and being transparent with the public.
Exactly. Building trust is essential.
Yeah, transparency and public engagement are super important.
I agree. People need to feel informed
Yes.
and involved in the decisions.
Especially when it comes to something like nuclear power.
For sure. It's a sensitive topic.
It is, and it brings up another critical aspect,
What's that?
the economic impact.
Right. The costs and benefits.
Yeah, well, cheaper nuclear power sounds great.
It does.
It's important to make sure those benefits are shared fairly,
Uh-huh.
and the costs aren't unfairly put on certain communities.
Yeah, equity is a huge factor here.
It's about finding that balance.
Absolutely.
Making sure SMRs are part of a just and sustainable energy transition.
That's the goal.
For everyone.
For everyone, exactly.
It's clear that SMRs have amazing potential
They do.
to be a big part of our clean energy future,
For sure.
but there's still a lot to learn
Definitely.
and a lot to consider.
A lot to discuss and debate.
Yeah, and I think it would be really valuable
Okay.
to explore some of the other countries working on SMRs
Oh, yeah, beyond China.
besides China. Yeah, what do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Broadening our perspective is super important.
Okay, cool.
So let's take a look at what's happening in other parts of the world,
Okay.
like the U.S., Canada, the U.K.
Yeah.
They're all taking different approaches to SMR development.
Okay, so we've talked about China. We've dug into this whole nuclear waste thing.
Uh-huh.
But like you said before, the SMR world goes way beyond China.
Oh, definitely.
So what's happening in other parts of the world? Are they taking like different approaches?
Yeah, absolutely. The race to develop SMRs is like a global thing.
Okay.
In the U.S., for example.
Yeah.
They're really focused on using SMRs to replace those old coal plants.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they see it as a way to like decarbonize their energy sector,
Okay.
but also still utilize, all the existing infrastructure
That makes sense.
and workforce.
So it's like a clean energy upgrade
Exactly.
for those old power plants.
Yeah, it's a pretty smart strategy.
It is. What about Canada, though? I know they've been exploring SMRs, too.
Yeah, Canada's approach is kind of interesting.
Okay.
They're looking at SMRs not just for electricity,
Oh.
but also for like industrial applications.
Like what?
So things like, providing heat and power to remote mining operations,
Ooh,
or even producing hydrogen
interesting.
for clean fuel.
Wow, so they're thinking outside the box.
They are. They're looking at all sorts of possibilities.
It seems like every country has their own vision,
Yeah.
for how SMRs could fit in.
It's true. Everyone's got their own priorities.
And the UK is another good example, right?
Oh, yeah.
They want to be like a global leader
Uh-huh.
in SMR tech.
That's their goal.
Not just by using them in the UK,
Oh, yeah.
but by like exporting their knowledge and designs.
Exactly. They want to be the go-to experts.
That makes sense. The UK has a long history with nuclear.
They do. They've been in the game for a while.
So it's really interesting to see how these different countries are approaching this whole SMR thing.
Right. Yeah. It's all based on their specific needs and resources.
Yeah, it shows how adaptable the technology could be.
It does. It's very versatile.
But like with any powerful tool,
Uh-huh.
you got to think about the bigger picture.
Absolutely. We can't just get tunnel vision.
Yeah, like nuclear power,
Yeah.
even in a smaller package,
Right.
still has a lot of,
Weight.
weight. Yeah.
That's a powerful force.
There are always those concerns around safety and security.
Right. That comes with the territory.
Yeah, even with all the advanced safety features, Accidents can happen.
That's true. We can't pretend they can't.
So we have to, like, plan for that possibility.
We do. It's about managing the risks.
So rigorous safety protocols.
For sure.
Ongoing testing.
Yep.
Transparency with the public.
All crucial.
Yeah, that transparency and public engagement, super important.
Couldn't agree more.
People need to feel informed.
Definitely.
And involved.
They have to have a voice.
Especially when it comes to something as big as nuclear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that actually brings us to another big thing.
What's that?
The economic impact.
Oh, right. The money side of things.
Yeah, because cheaper nuclear power sounds great.
It does, on paper.
But we got to make sure the benefits are shared fairly.
Exactly.
And that the costs aren't, like...
dumped on certain communities?
Exactly.
Yeah, it has to be equitable.
It's all about finding that balance, right?
It is. It's a balancing act.
Making sure SMRs are part of a just and sustainable energy transition for everyone.
That's the ultimate goal.
It's clear that SMRs have this incredible potential.
They do.
To be a huge part of this clean energy future.
No doubt.
But there's still so much to learn.
There is.
And so much to consider.
It's an evolving landscape.
It really is. And I think, on that note, to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Yeah, some things to ponder.
About these fascinating, complex...
ever evolving.
Exactly. Stay curious. Keep asking those tough questions.
Yeah, don't be afraid to dig deeper.
And remember, the future of energy is in all our hands.
That's a great way to put it.